So they went in and saved the people before they could kill any of them. And he had to go to the VA today. He's driving down the road. He's getting to a better cell spot. We're going to call Warren here in a few minutes. In fact, he's online with us now. But I wanted to bring Stewart Rhodes up first, who's gone and shot a video interview that's posted at Infowars.com. We're going to play part of that coming up as well. But Stewart, because you're a lawyer, you've met with him, you know the case, give us the specifics, because this is happening to veterans all over the country, and not just veterans, to citizens. And the big banks have been caught taking houses that are totally paid for, they don't even have deeds to. In this case, though, I didn't know that you could take people's houses if they were retired and they were homesteaded, their house, if it was their only residence, and if they were retired, at least in Texas and most other states. I know you're up in Montana as well, so you're the one breaking the story. Constitutional lawyer Stewart Rhodes, what do you make of this? What's happening? And tell us about Warren C. Bodeker.
Well, what this really is elder abuse. And what they did is he didn't disclose some silver coins that he had, that him and his wife had been storing away since 1964. They store food. They're LDS. They've stored food all their lives, and they also socked away some silver, and they never spent it. And in his mind, this was his retirement, and so he didn't disclose it. Because he didn't disclose that, and he had a relative of his, unfortunately, rat him out to the court, his stepson. And when they found that out, then they dropped the hammer on him and said, you didn't disclose this, and so we're going to take everything you own. We're going to do an adversarial proceeding.
But that's ridiculous. If he had something back in the 60s, I mean, that's his.
Well, he should have disclosed it. Even if it's exempt, they're supposed to disclose it. But this is the problem. Here's a man who doesn't understand complex legal issues, doesn't understand bankruptcy, and they get him in this position. And once they got something on him, they just went after him like a mad dog. And they just said, if you fight us, we'll take everything you have, and you'll wind up penniless. We'll attack your homestead. We'll void your homestead. We'll deny you the discharge. And so they pressured him into signing a stipulation that agreed to waive his homestead and give up his bankruptcy. And so he wound up with nothing in the end. He didn't get anything out of it. They went ahead and denied him the bankruptcy and wiped away his homestead.
over some coins, losing a house, land, everything.
Right. And so they pressured him into signing this, and we're going to challenge this on his capacity to understand what he was signing. His lawyer at the time gave him, I think, horrendous advice. There's no way they're going to put an old man like this in prison. So it was an empty threat, but they pressured and threatened him with prison time, and they pressured him into signing away his right to his homestead. And as you said earlier, when you have a homestead like that, creditors can't get it. So he'd have been better off if he just unplugged his phone and threw all the bills in the trash and ignored the bank's call.
Exactly, but people don't know this. In fact, they had the Department of Education SWAT team people over unpaid bills to create a national fear that you can be arrested if you don't pay tuition, which is a fraud. There is no law. We don't have debtor's prison. That's what 1776 was all about, while the bankers steal billions. But continuing here, this is amazing. So obviously somebody wanted that house. Somebody wanted to be able to sell it. And so yeah,
exactly. And this is the problem is that from what I know of bankruptcy, and after calling, I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer, but I called several, and they said, well, that the trustee gets a percentage of whatever she can bring into the estate. And so if she can successfully attack his homestead and bring the home into the estate for the creditors, then she gets a cut. And this is the other thing, is this trustee hired herself as the lawyer for the estate and as the lawyer for the trustee. So she's her own lawyer. And so she's charging legal fees to advise herself and to advise the estate. And then she's being paid a percentage, apparently, a percentage of the take for the whole thing. Oh, boy,
I tell you, so this is a whole ball of worms here, Stewart. As a constitutional lawyer, I know top of your class, but this is a whole other legal hat to wear here, but I'm not a lawyer, but this looks like somebody's going to be in some big trouble unless the local judge and everybody are in on it. Here's the problem. This guy is a famous war hero. Tell us about that, and then we're going to bring Warren C. Bodeker up.
Well, as you said earlier, he's part of one of the most famous rescues. He, along with 121 other paratroopers, they parachuted in at 7 o'clock in the morning, first thing in the morning when they knew the Japanese guards would be out exercising, and they caught them with their pants down. They rescued over 2,000 civilians and also military, including men, women, and children. And they knew that the Japanese were going to slaughter them all. And they knew that. That's why they did this. They went in behind enemy lines, got them out. And when they came back, when the Japanese retook the area, they took revenge on the local population and killed 1,500 Filipino men, women, and children villagers to get revenge on them for aiding the raid. And so this is a good example. I mean, if Warren hadn't done this, and him and his fellow paratroopers had not done this, all 2,200 of those prisoners would have been slaughtered, and then they would never have had children and grandchildren. You can probably figure about 50,000 people wouldn't exist on this planet.
And by the way, I've never been in the military. I'm not even a history buff when it comes to the military. I knew about this raid because I remember over a decade ago seeing a show on it on, I think it was History Channel, about this. Right. This is a very famous. So, I mean, this guy really is part of a serious war hero operation. And now here he is. They're going to have to dig up his wife. I want to bring him up. He's on the road having to go to the VA right now. Warren, he goes by Ren C. Bodeker, 89-year-old World War II Army Airborne combat veteran of a whole bunch of combat jumps. Ren, if you can hear me, you're speaking to several million people. What would you like to say about what's happening to you?
I can't believe it. I can't believe what they're doing. My wife and me built a home, bought the property, paid for it. We wanted this property to remain in the family, never to be sold for the rest of our lives and the rest of our posterity. And we both agreed we both wanted to be buried on the property. She died July 3rd of last year with cancer, and I buried her. Now they tell me I got to dig her up and move her in 30 days' time.
That is cruel and very abusive. I'm just to interrupt to bring Stuart Rhodes up. Stuart, I mean, isn't this a lawsuit waiting to happen? I mean, this type of cruel behavior towards somebody?
Well, unfortunately, they've like the Nazis legalized everything they did. Apparently, this is now legal. They've made it legal. In fact, he was in the hospital last week being tested for prostate cancer. He's been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And they had a hearing on this, and he was not able to attend. From his hospital bed, he faxed in a motion to continue, and the judge denied it, said there's no excuse for him not being there.
My God, okay, well, I'm going to go back to him. We obviously need to get on this judge with the public. In Montana, if you don't go stand up for this guy, you get what you deserve. The rest of America. I'm sick of watching them pick on old people. This is how I got started on air 17 years ago, as people remember those newscasts I did with them taking old people's land for 3-inch grass, with the health department claiming that it was a zone violation. So I started going to city council people's houses and showing they had taller grass and demanding that they get in trouble. And they backed off. Where are people standing up for old folks? Now, I'm going to go back to Ren here in just a minute. But Stuart, tell us how you got in contact with him, and then you can ask him the question since you know him.
Well, I went down to a VFW hall to give an Oath Keeper presentation in Sanders County in Plains, where he lives. And the other veterans there told me about this. And then I got in contact direct with him. We're trying to find him a really good bankruptcy lawyer. I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer. I just don't know that system. And so we got to find somebody who's an ace bankruptcy lawyer who will go in there and fight. My lawyer is
Eric Tabb here in town, but he beats the city all the time in the feds, but I don't think he can practice in Montana.
Well, if he's admitted to federal bankruptcy court, I believe he can be admitted pro hac vice. So I think he could. So please put him in touch with me.
All right, I will. I'll call my lawyer. Let's go back to Ren. I mean, why don't you ask him some of the questions here, Stuart, since you know him?
Well, Ren, and just give the people here a background. Like you said earlier, you planned on being buried there with your wife. You never intended to sell your property. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And why'd you sign this stipulation? Did you feel? I mean, did they threaten you with prison and with taking everything away from you and leaving you penniless?
Yes, they said I could face federal prison under the Fraud Act, and that I could end up in prison if I didn't make some changes. I don't remember exactly how they worded it or anything else, but they had me sign a waiver on the bankruptcy that I went along with them not allowing my bankruptcy. And I don't remember the details exactly how it was they put it to me to release my homestead, which I ended up signing off on my homestead so that they could pay the creditors.
Right. I do remember the details. The stipulation says that in exchange for them not doing it through an adversarial process, waiving your homestead or voiding your homestead and denying the discharge, that you agree to do those two things. You agree to waive your homestead and deny the discharge and sell your home. And so you really got nothing out of it, except they told you, well, if you don't do it this way, we'll eat up all of it with attorney's fees and costs, and in the end, you'll want it penniless. Let
me ask Ren this. Ren, are they preying on other elderly folks in your area? Because I've seen a pattern nationwide of shaking down and getting people to sign documents they don't understand here in this sickening country we live in, where they Time Magazine and Newsweek glorify euthanizing people like you. Do you know other veterans or folks in your area being preyed on?
No, I don't. Not as such. I've heard, as I've watched different things on the computer, I've read different things like in Florida and other places where they're doing not the exact same thing, but they are taking homes away from the veterans and putting them out in the street. I don't know. What's going on is terrible, all over the United States.
How long do you have till they make you exhume your wife and move off your property?
They have not sent me a notice in the mail, but at that hearing on the 12th that I couldn't be to, they said I had to move her off in 30 days' time.
So you're in the hospital, and you sent that into the judge. Who is this judge? Do we know, Stuart, who this judge is?
Yes, his last name is Kirshner. He's the federal judge for Montana, for bankruptcy.
The doctor sent in an affidavit to the judge that it was impossible for me to leave the hospital. And I believe, the way I heard it, the attorney for the veterans there in Fort Harrison also contacted the judge and told him I couldn't be there. The judge says, it doesn't matter. It just went ahead with the trial without me there. I had this lady that's really been helping me, Roxanne Ryan, and I gave her power of attorney to act for me, and they wouldn't pay any attention to what she said. And they ended up giving the property, selling the property that's worth between $350,000, $400,000 for $155,000 to this party. They gave us till last night, actually it was Sunday night, to be out of my home with all my stuff. And at 3 o'clock yesterday, they were going to send the sheriff or a deputy and a locksmith to change the locks on my door so I could no longer get in.
Yeah, I should have added how immediate this is. You're going to the VA right now. You've pulled over just to this interview for treatment for cancer. I mean, this is insane. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, but you told me off air, you told Dew off air. Is it true the sheriff refused yesterday to go throw him out and told the feds they can just do it themselves?
That's right. The sheriff of Sanders County, Tom Rummel, I met him down at Sheriff Mack's Sheriff's Conference, and he called the trustee yesterday and let her know that he believes that his due process rights were denied when he wasn't allowed to be he couldn't be at the hearing, wasn't allowed to continue the hearing, and they went without him. So he said, I'm not going to give you a deputy to do a standby. And so what they usually do is send a deputy along whenever they evict somebody. And he said, I'm not going to send a deputy. You'll have to do it on your own. Go find somebody else to be your muscle. So I think that's a really, it's one silver lining in this horrible story. She did not show up. In fact, the locksmith did not show up. Neither did the buyer. No one showed up yesterday. They all stayed away. I think they're, like cockroaches scurrying from the light. They don't want to confront us angry veterans. They don't want to confront the news media. We call the local media out there. They were on standby.
As you know, we sent reporters